And welcome everybody to the final yard here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Louis Sung. I am joined by Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke, to break down this, quite frankly, I'm going to be dead honest with you guys, infuriating loss of the Miami Dolphins versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I know that Manny Chang, who is the producer for 5 Reasons Sports, he is actually hosting a Spaces right now on his own Twitter account, absolutely thrilled by the outcome of this, him being an Eagles fan. But I'm not going to lie, this is one of those days that I know we're not supposed to make excuses. I know we're not supposed to talk about it. We're supposed to just say, don't beat, weren't good enough, job done, etc., etc. Duke, with all good conscience, today I just can't do it. I can't. The level of insanity that has to be present for what happened tonight. I'm not going to say the Dolphins didn't make mistakes. They did. They were called offsides. Christian Wilkins was caught offsides a few times. Not going to deny that. The Dolphins did some things they shouldn't have done. Tyreek Hill dropped a pass that would have been an easy touchdown. He did that. It did happen. He dropped a couple passes. It did happen. Mistakes were made. Liam Eichenberg, bad snaps. It happened. But just 10 penalties on Miami and 0 goose egg for the Kelly Green throwback Philadelphia Eagles. And if you look on Twitter now, you will find at least 8 different instances where there was an obvious penalty that should have been called against Philly and nothing. Crickets. Probably the most egregious one of all was the one where Cedric Wilson literally had his face mask yanked and it went for absolutely nothing. Nada. Didn't even look at it. Didn't blink. I hate to do this whole blaming the refs thing, man. But any attempts at momentum, any attempts at getting a drive going, like if you can't get lucky once, you can't get a call, you can't buy a call. No, like there's no holding calls, there's no pass interference, no face mask, no nothing. You Philly got bailed out so many times by plays that if the penalty, it was ticky-tack at most. Some of them were egregious. Yes, Christian Wilkins caught offsides twice. No denying that. I'm not going to deny it for the second. But other calls, like the roughing the passer, and all you did was give him a shove that would have been legal even in flag football. The Eagles got helped so hard. And I'm not going to say that the Dolphins would have won the game, obviously, if the penalties had not occurred, or if maybe a couple of penalties had gone Miami's way. But it certainly would have been closer. It would have been at least a 1-score game, not a 2-score game. That's for sure. And this is going to go into the whole Dolphins can't beat good teams narrative. Dolphins can't beat physical teams narrative. We can have all that discussion. We're going to go back home, play New England, hopefully kick their rear ends from here to back to New England. And then we'll go into Germany whole thing again. But at what point do we say this is unacceptable? It's unacceptable. And I just needed to get all that out. Duke, I'll let you go talk now.
Yeah, I mean, I want to believe deep down that sports isn't fixed. But a game like tonight, honestly, would make you question that. I mean, it's one thing if it's like, we complain that, I don't want to sound like a whiny Bills fan and complain about the refs. But 10 penalties to 0. There's no way they played a perfect game. And yeah, they had a couple that were offsetting. So essentially that was bailing them out. But the face mask, that could have cost points. That was a first down. The interception that Tua threw, that was defensive pass interference. The linebacker never turned around and made contact with Mostert before the ball got there. So, I mean, you can't you can't miss those calls if you're an NFL official. And if I'm Stephen Ross, I'm calling whoever I got to call and pull whatever strings I got to pull to get something about that corrected. Nothing will come of it because that's the way it is, but you got to do something. And now my concern is what happens in 2 weeks when they go to Germany and they have to face the Chiefs, and you're going to get the same kind of calls, because it seems like that teams.
Germany is neutral. Germany's neutral. I'm not
worried about home field. I'm worried about the teams that they want to win seem to get these calls. And I'm not going to say anything about Philadelphia because they played well. They got after Tua.
Yeah, we have Eagles fans in here telling us that we're frauds and that we're foolish for thinking they would win. For the record, Mr. Matthew Smith, I picked the Eagles to win tonight against my Dolphins. My anger is not about the fact that we lost. My anger is that all the penalties that could have been called against Philly were just, I see nothing. I hear nothing. Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing. Nothing happened.
Look, I tip my hat to Philly. They won the game. But, saying that the Dolphins are frauds, I mean, if you are a fan of a team and if that was the shoe was on the other foot and those were penalties that the Dolphins didn't get called, I would be like, yeah, they're getting bailed out tonight. I would feel bad about that win. So if you're a fan of that team and you're just ignoring that, maybe you should learn more about the game. Sorry, I hate to be that way, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. 10 penalties for 70 yards to 0 penalties. That just doesn't happen. Not in today's NFL. And, we complain, like I said, about the Bills fans. And I looked at the Bills game today, and the penalties were relatively even on both sides. And usually that's what happens. You think, oh, my team's getting calls. They're not getting calls, and the other team's getting those calls. And it usually evens out in the end. Maybe a handful here or there. Or if you're a really bad team, with untalented players, you're going to get these penalties. Like, if you're the Carolina Panthers who are 0-6 and you're facing the Dolphins at home and they're beating you up and down the field, you're going to make mistakes when you're a young team. But that's bad. Like I said, 2 penalties that cost the Dolphins opportunities for points. The face mask that was not called and the defensive pass interference on Mostert that directly led to a turnover. So,
yeah, but that one though, that was a bad idea by Tua. I'm not gonna complain about that.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, maybe it's a bad idea, but if that call is made, you get the ball at the 1 yard line.
True,
and
but
the call has to be made because that is the play, and it wasn't like a bang bang play. They showed it on the replay. He hit Mostert. Mostert was going back for the ball and couldn't, and that's twice that's happened to Tua, and it's led to an interception. One was against the Giants. Now that was a different play, but it's the same principle. It's like, the officiating this season has been bad across the board. Just calls that are not being made or calls that are being made that shouldn't be made. I don't know what's going on. It's just bad. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, the officials won this game for them. It was bad, and it helped Philadelphia, no doubt. We also got to remember, and I said this last week, and I said it in the pregame, and I've said it before on Pulse Defense Nation. The idea, or at least for me, the idea was to go into the bye week at 7-2, and which means you needed all the home games. Oh, that was before the Giants game that I said that. You got to, because we were all kind of reeling from the Bills game. You need to win your home games and steal one of the two. And if there's one of the two games that you're going to lose, this was it. Because it's a non-conference opponent. So what happens to Philadelphia the rest of the season really has no bearing on us. Now they're going to play, they'll play the Bills and everybody else. So, maybe they'll get a win there, and that helps. And maybe if it comes down to a tiebreaker where it's a common opponent. But, Miami's got their own road. If it gets to that point, we're kind of in bad shape anyway. So, this was the game that was okay to lose. You just hate losing it in that fashion. Now, it was a 2-score game. Really shouldn't have been a 2-score game. The Dolphins kind of cost themselves opportunities for points. They went for that 4th down where the play wasn't where the face mask wasn't called, and they could have taken 3 points there and got points. The failed touchdown at the end where they threw the interception, you could have got points there. There's the dropped pass that Tyreek had. I think that was the same drive with the pass interference. I don't remember. Either way, that was a touchdown pass. So you had opportunities. They were good against the run. We knew that coming in, and they held. Raheem Mostert did well on the ground in the second half. He was -6 yards, -8 yards, I think, in the first half. So, So they did well, and he came out, and I think he had like 42 something yards. So to be negative and get that is pretty good. We were playing. We did not have basically 60% of the starting offensive line was out.
Our entire left side was back up.
The entire left side was out. And you had Lester Cotton, and let's be honest and be fair to Lester Cotton. He's played on the backups. He's played on the scout team. He's not been in there in this situation. And you have
he only really made one mistake.
Well, he didn't, but he was, again, it's that communication process. So whenever you have breakdowns on the offensive line, whether it be due to injuries or whatever, you're gonna see some struggles. And I think that was apparent. And I think they kind of game planned around that, but at some point it wasn't going to work. And Philadelphia's front is too good for that. So if Miami's starting offensive line is in this game, is it a better? Do they have better success? Probably. I don't want to play those kind of games. But then you had your starting, part of your starting secondary was out, so you lost X. That changes your game plan. And they passed the ball well. The good thing was the pass rush was there, and they got they got 3 sacks, I believe, if I'm reading this right. And running the ball, they rushed for 99 yards on 34 attempts, so that's 2.9 yards per carry.
That was for the Eagles, right? And a lot of that came from DeAndre Swift at the very end there.
So, they got some at the end. So, yeah, the Dolphins clamped down on the run game. The turnovers, they had 2 turnovers. Miami had the 1. People want to complain about the brotherly shove or the tush push or whatever else like that. I'll tell you how to. Now, I'm an old school football fan, right? I grew up watching, the old guys. The way you stop that is, as soon as they call it, you jump across the line of scrimmage and hit the quarterback as hard as you positively can. You send 2 guys. Now, that's a penalty.
And probably an ejection and a fine and maybe a suspension in this.
If I'm Stephen Ross, I say, look, I'll pay your fine.
And your suspension
I can't
for
pay
being.
You won't get suspended for that.
Do you want? No. Dude, do you want to bet? You're saying old school football fan. This isn't old school football anymore. This isn't Larry Zonka and them boys. You end up taking a hit to Jalen Hurts' head, and whoever the defender was that's responsible.
You just hit him.
You don't have a choice. He's going in head first.
Well, I mean, if that's the call and you dive across the line, like I said, it's a penalty, but you're trying to stop it. You can do like that one play I saw on Twitter where the guy jumps across the line and basically power bombs the quarterback, grabs him by the waist, and slings him down. Again, I think it's, I've said this before, and I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to advocate injuring a player. I don't want to injure a player. But I watched, I think the Patriots and the Ravens, it was the playoff game back in like 08 or 09 or whenever, when the Patriots ran out of the building by the Ravens. And there was a route that I think Wes Welker or one of the receivers ran. And I don't remember if it was Ed Reed or whoever it was for the Ravens, came across the middle and absolutely clocked him, dislodged the ball, old school football hit, 15-yard penalty. Guess how many times they ran that route the rest of the game? 0. They didn't want to do it. So I've often said sometimes a 15-yard penalty is not the worst thing. So, like, for example, tonight in the game, Devonta Smith catches a pass. He runs like a whip route or whatever you call it back to the outside. Deshaun Elliott is coming across the field. And Smith gets the ball. He's outside of he's gotten away from Eli Apple at that point. And he's not run out of bounds yet. And Deshaun Elliott just lays off. And I was like, why did you lay off? Knock the guy out of bounds. Make him earn those extra yards. So again, we'll worry about that play. Nobody runs that play as well as they do. So people are like, let's ban the play. Whatever. We don't care. The big thing right now for the Dolphins, and I promise I'll shut up. The big thing for the Dolphins right now is just get healthy. If they were full strength in this game, and the Eagles can say they weren't full strength, so nobody's at full strength. The Dolphins got reinforcements coming, so Armstead will be back, and you get Achane back, and you'll get Ramsey back probably next week. If not, you'll get him in Germany, and then you'll have X back. You already had Jalen Phillips back, and he made an impact this game. So Miami's starting to get some key players back at this part of the season, and just in time for a run. So that's it. I've said my piece.
I mean, all of those things are not incorrect technically, but look. Obviously, my issue with tonight was not that the Dolphins lost the game. Again, I picked Philly to win. I expected Miami to lose. My frustration is the penalties. It really is. And I know that this is where the discussion about NFL is rigged. NFL doesn't, they want specific teams to win. This is where that conspiracy comes into play. There were so many calls that should have been called and were not. There's no getting around that. It should have at most been a one-score game. That's my opinion. And if it had been a one-score game and Miami lost, and then I would have been like, okay, whatever. We got beat by a good team. It happens. And we got beat on this. And by the way, for all the reasons that I laid out during pregame, during Pulse, during all those other shows, I expected the Philly to win. The Eagles were pissed off. They lost at the Jets. They wanted revenge. They didn't want to lose again. They were wearing their special Kelly Green uniforms. They had this extra mojo going. I did not think that the refs would also be wearing Kelly Green underneath. That is where the frustration is. That is where my anger comes in. Losing isn't my issue. I thought the Dolphins would lose. I didn't think it would lose like this. And that's where I'm upset. Now, like you mentioned, ultimately this game doesn't really matter much in the grand scheme of things, like in the standings and where the Dolphins are going to be ranking in the playoff race, because they are going to be in the playoff race. I don't want to hear anybody come out and say all of a sudden that Miami are frauds and Miami's not good enough. Miami's not going to make the playoffs. Miami's still first place in the AFC East because Buffalo lost to New England, who I firmly believe we are going to absolutely kick their rear ends all the way from Miami back to New England. I don't think that Miami's going to have any issue beating up Mac Jones a second time. Kansas City, most people picked Miami to lose that game. I picked Miami to lose that game before the season. I'm sure, Duke, you probably picked Miami to lose that game before the season because it's Kansas City. It's Patrick Mahomes. You expect a loss in that circumstance.
Well, if you're going to play that team, you're getting them on a neutral site, and the home field advantage is gone because, like Philadelphia, Kansas City is a tough place to play. And they have to travel basically as far as you do. So there's not really any advantages gained. And while now, look, I want to say this. If anybody wants to complain about Tua or whatever else, look at what Patrick Mahomes did to the Chiefs or to the Chargers today, and then go look at what Tua did to the Chargers. Basically similar stuff. So, yeah, apparently if you're a good quarterback and you need to get it going, just go play the Chargers because you're going to um, put up yards and points against them. So yeah, that if you're going to get them, you get them in the best scenario like that. I agree with you. I think New England, they needed this game to kind of right the ship. Even though I think before the game they said that they extended Bill Belichick, so I don't know what that was about, but I still don't I don't know that necessarily means they couldn't fire him anyway. But um, whatever, they needed that game. It was more than the Bills, I guess. And I don't, the Bills beat Miami 48-20. So they get bragging rights in that regard. But since their Week 4 Super Bowl, they lost to the Jaguars in London, and the Jaguars are also 5-2, so they're a good team. They um, nearly lost to the Giants, the 1-win Giants, now 2 wins with a backup quarterback and a makeshift offensive line, dragging dudes off the couch to play on their offensive line, and still lost that game with, again, a missed call. And then they lose to the 1-win Patriots, a game that they were favored by 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's a struggling team right now. And so if people want to complain about the Dolphins and losing this game, they can look at what all happened in the NFL today. The Chargers, they're 2-4. They're pretty much out of it. The Raiders were 3-3, had a chance to go over 500 and get lost to they lost to Tyson Bagent, starting a Division II rookie quarterback, lost to them. So just one of those weeks that happens. You're going to face adversity all throughout the year. You lose starting left guard this game. You're already down starting left tackle. And nothing against Kendall Lamb. He's played well this year. Lost your
Kendall
starting
Lamb
center.
wasn't the issue. It was Eichenberg.
And I mean, even then, I mean, it wasn't like Tua was constantly under pressure. I think at the end of the game where they started taking some sacks and things, it was more or less like he was, they smelled blood in the water and they knew we had to pass. And so they were going to get after the passer. But early in the game, they had 1 sack, went for like 2 yards. I don't count the one against Cedric Wilson because who cares? But they had 1 sack against Tua in meaningful minutes, and Miami still scored. So, again, we keep coming back to it. This just the lopsided officiating. I mean, if it was 10 penalties to 5 penalties, sure, whatever. But 10-0, that just can't happen. And again, it's not just this game. It is across the league. Just officials are missing calls. They are making bad calls. Just all kinds of stuff. Like I said, we saw the game last Sunday night where the Giants tight end, I think it was Darren Waller, got held or interfered with, no call. And then tonight we saw the face mask. It was obvious face mask. I mean, his head turned sideways, no call. Jalen Phillips has 2 guys holding him, and he still gets the sack. So, I mean, again, just, you can't do anything about it. You just got to play better if you're the Dolphins and just hope that, you can't make these penalties. I don't know. I didn't watch necessarily close enough in detail to notice if the timing was off. I know there was a couple of snaps.
It was off. It was 100% off.
But just the fact if the overall motion, it seemed to be working. I just, and we lost Waddle for a while, so that hurt. Again, Miami officiating, whatever. Miami was really banged up. They just couldn't overcome those injuries to get the win or to keep it close enough. And then the interception at the end, say what you will about the penalty, whether it was a penalty or not. You know, you can't make those plays in the red zone. You had a chance to tie the game, and you didn't, and that was a deciding factor. So,
yeah, I'm not coming out here and saying that the Eagles didn't deserve to win that game. I'm not coming out here and saying the Eagles didn't play a better game. They did. They did play better than Miami at the end of the day. Too many mistakes that were legitimate mistakes by Miami, and that ultimately made the difference. Those penalties against Miami didn't help. And how many of them were actual penalties? Probably about maybe half of them. Probably the other half were like, what the heck is that? And then all the non-calls on Philly. That's the frustration. Would it have made a big difference in the final score? Maybe it would have been a 1-score game instead of a 2-score game. That's the frustration.
Yeah. And I don't worry so much about calls the Dolphins get. And I mean, if they're obvious, like the hold that Lester Cotton got called for on the touchdown pass.
Yeah, that was a hold.
It was a hold.
No getting around it.
It's obvious. Don't, now, did he grabbed him and let go? Was it enough? Did it really impede his progress? I don't know. But, like you said, it's the lack of calls on the other team. It was 10 penalties to 0 penalties. That means they played a perfect game without penalties, and that just doesn't happen.
And it wasn't true. It's not true.
And we know it wasn't true because we saw those plays. So just, that is an issue. But looking ahead, I'm on to New England at this point. So
we kind of have to be. We have to be because if we dwell on this too long, we're gonna call it, like, my neck already hurts for the past 3 days for reasons unrelated to the Dolphins. This is not going to help if I dwell on this, and I have to be up at work at 6. I have to be up at 6 in the morning to go to work, and it's almost midnight now, so I'm not gonna get any sleep. It's just fun. The thing. So with Miami, here's the situation. Here's what it is, and you already brought it up, but I'll just summarize it. We lost against a good team. One way or another, it does not have any bearing ultimately on the AFC playoff picture, other than the fact that there's another L in our column. We're now 5-2. Okay, big deal. We'll be 6-2 next week. And so you got Jalen Ramsey, who's already back in practice. He will probably be back for Kansas City. That's my guess. They will probably sit him out against the Patriots. I would not be surprised if Xavier Howard is also sat out against New England. And I would definitely also not be surprised to see Connor Williams sit out against New England, even though he will absolutely try to kill Mike McDaniel in his sleep over the fact that he keeps getting benched. It's like protecting from himself is what McDaniel's calling it. I think Connor Williams is calling it, you're not going to let me get paid because I can't prove myself. But that's another discussion altogether. That's for another show.
And again, you get reinforcements coming back, particularly after the bye week. You get Armstead back. You get Achane back. You get Ramsey back. They should all come back.
I'm not holding my breath on Armstead, Duke. I'm really not.
Well, I mean, he's going to be set to return.
I'm not holding my breath.
But anyway, without him, you still get Ramsey back, who's practicing. You get Achane back. You're going to get Nick Needham back. So, I mean, look at that the play that I think it was the 4th down play that the Eagles had to A.J. Brown. That he's technically he was short by a yard, but they were going to get the touchdown anyway. And that was Perry Nickerson in defense against one of the best receivers in the league. So, I mean, you got Perry Nickerson, a special teams guy, guys like Justin Bethel, who got beat up against the Bills. These special teams guys, these DB6, DB7 kind of guys. And then, hopefully in a couple of weeks, you're going to have Ramsey, X, Needham, Kohu. You got your safeties. So you've got your secondaries there. Your pass rush is starting to come along. And your linebackers are starting to play more effectively. So again, it's like, a lot of people were down in the dumps about the Bills game. They'll be down in the dumps about this, and nobody likes a loss. But we take it for what it is. It was a bad loss with circumstances, but it's against the NFC team that's not going to have much bearing on the AFC playoff team race. And we did it with a skeleton crew on the offensive line, injuries all over the place, and we're getting these guys back. So, I'm looking forward to what the rest of the season holds. Worst case scenario, they need to be 6-3 coming out of the bye. Because then you get the Jets, which they're going to be tough. Then you get the Raiders, the Commanders, and the Titans. These are winnable games.
Yeah, and Raiders, Commanders, Titans, all three of those games. I'm not even breaking a sweat. I'm immediately already chalking those in as wins. So,
yeah. So you've got a chance to get in there and put yourself in near the top. And yeah, your two losses, and the Chiefs have one loss, so you're behind them right now. But you were behind them in the standings coming into this game, and you play them in 2 weeks. If you sneak in there, get a W, you're back in the mix for the number 1 seed. And I think Miami can put themselves in that position. And they need a signature win. This would have been a signature win, but you could just kind of tell early on. And again, with the officiating, it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, wasn't meant to be. All right. We are on to New England. We are going to have Dolphins content. No Fins Nation tomorrow morning because I have not had a chance to record it, obviously. I have to go to sleep. I have a full-time job still. And so does Duke. Like, when do you work, Duke? What's your...
Well, I don't have to be into work until 8:30, but I am up usually before 6.
No sleeping in for you either, huh?
No.
Well, I appreciate you staying up with me anyway, so we're going to go ahead and call it here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, including Eagles fans who may be listening to us whine and moan, but let's be real again. I'm not upset about the loss. I'm just upset about the officiating, okay? But anyway, we're going to call here. Thank you all so much for listening. Oh, and because I forgot to mention it before, because I was on an absolute tangent and I could not stop myself, make sure you go to prizepicks.com and use that promo code 5. That's FIVE. And they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. I almost forgot the promo. Like we can't forget our sponsors. That's how they stop sponsoring. Anyway, that's going to be it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We will see you all next week for another game.